Hello, world, and welcome to the In My Footsteps podcast. I am Christopher Setterland, coming to you from the vacation destination known as Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and this is episode 213. Fall has arrived. My favorite time of year is going strong. This is the last show of September, filled with loads of Gen X nostalgia. It's going to kick off as we try to fall back into fitness and we look back at the 1980s VHS home workout craze. We're going to go way back in the day and look at some forgotten 1970s cereals. Were any of these on your table? There will be a brand new top 5 as we look at the top 5 1980s celebrity crushes. And there will be a brand new This Week in History and Time Capsule looking back at the original publication of the book The Hobbit. All of that is coming up right now on episode 213 of the In My Footsteps podcast. Yes, fall has arrived. The leaves are changing as we speak. Thank you for tuning in for your weekly dose of Gen X nostalgia. You heard all the fun stuff I've got on the docket this week. I feel like I'm going to need a little bit of energy to get through this episode. Ooh, there it is. Get that going. I'm trying my best to edit this, but if you hear a very angry, squawking blue jay outside, I promise it's not effects I've put in. It's just like yelling nonstop. Anyway. We've got a lot of fun stuff to get to, but of course I cannot start my show without thanking my Patreon subscribers, Laurie, Mary Lou, Ashley, Kevin, Leo, Marguerite, Neglectoid, Crystal, Matt, and Dr. Shrimp Porto Chico. Thank you all for being my biggest backers. If you enjoy my content, you can become a subscriber on Patreon for $5 a month. You get access to bonus podcast episodes, access to the remastered Without a Map live streams. I've got a special surprise going up on the Patreon channel within the next week or so. I recorded a fuller standalone podcast about my experiences living in Florida 20 years ago. I'm going to be putting that up for all members, free and paying. It's over 40 minutes of me regaling you with stories of my time in Florida. So in addition to what's going to be going up on Patreon, this week is another big week. Before the podcast goes live next week, I will be publishing my 10th book, In Their Footsteps, The Interesting People, Places, and Events of Cape Cod History. I've been working on the landing page for it so I can share that so you can order your copy right from there. It's going to be in probably local bookstores, Amazon. My hope is to probably do some sort of events, speaking events for the book next year. Also, don't forget, if you can, to donate to the GoFundMe for When Henry Met Henry, the short film that is a co-production with myself and Frank Durant. There's still a few more weeks for you to donate. If you're listening to this podcast after Halloween, don't go donate because it's not there anymore. But there's plenty more housekeeping stuff to get into at the end of the podcast. I have scared the Blue Jays away, basically by going on YouTube and finding hawk and eagle called noises and playing them out my window. So with that taken care of, let's get this party started. Let's go back to the origins of home workouts, especially those you could get on VHS tapes back in the 80s. Coming up now on episode 213 of the In My Footsteps podcast. Ah yes, fall into fitness, one of the cheesy cliche terms that I've learned to not like as a personal trainer. It's right up there with New Year, New You as far as fitness trends go. But I didn't want to do a segment about actually getting back into fitness. It needed to have some kind of nostalgia twinge to it. And I started thinking back to when I was a kid growing up in the 1980s, especially early in the morning when I would get up before school, and there would be these kind of interactive workout shows. I'd be sitting there eating cereal, watching people in the spandex, fluorescent-colored leotards doing all kinds of aerobics. In the 1980s, they saw the explosion of a cultural phenomenon merging technology, fitness, and celebrity influence. The home workout, whether TV show or video, it was riding on the booming popularity of VCRs, VHS cassettes, with millions of Americans transforming their living rooms into makeshift gyms. They'd be guided by energetic instructors beaming through their TV sets. It was a way for people to get in shape without feeling uncomfortable in a crowded gym. Believe me, I've known people that have said they wanted to join a gym, but they needed to get into better shape first. And I'm like, it defeats the purpose of going to the gym. That's why you go. By the early 1980s, the VCR had become an affordable household appliance, and VHS had won the format war against Betamax. With the VCR technology, consumers could watch and rewatch movies, TV shows, and you started to get more instructional videos that were coming out in the 1980s. At the same time, fitness itself was undergoing a cultural boom, with the late 70s and early 80s seeing aerobics, jogging, and health clubs taking off as Americans became increasingly focused on exercise, health, and physical appearance. Typically for these cassettes or TV show workouts, you wouldn't need much. Sometimes you would need nothing, just workout clothes, and that could be anything you wanted if you were in your own living room. At most, they might ask you to get a mat, maybe some light dumbbells, some bands, maybe. TV exercise programs were not uncommon. In fact, the first one that was ever on TV was the Jack LaLanne show. That was hosted by fitness guru Jack LaLanne, and it was on all the way from 1951 to 1985. Jack LaLanne, if you're not familiar with him, he was kind of this marvel of physical fitness, things that he would do. There's a whole bunch if you want to go research him. There were a lot of benefits of working out at home. The first thing is the privacy. As I said, people felt intimidated at gyms, especially if you're a beginner. You go in there and there's a lot of people that are in perfect shape. Most of them can be kind of standoffish. Not that they're all jerks, but some are there very focused on specific things for their workouts, so they're not looking to stop what they're doing and help people learn. You also had affordability with the workout tapes. You could purchase one and then just do it repeatedly, or at least until you got bored of it. So if you had no desire to ever join a gym, that would beat the recurring cost of a monthly gym membership. There was flexibility so that you could basically, if you had the desire to work out, you could just go to your TV and put the tape in. No need to go to a class at a specific time. No need to drive to a gym. And as I said a minute ago, there was easy access to these. You didn't need super duper gym machines. You didn't need a bunch of heavy weights, kettlebells. It was usually pretty cheap, minimal space, maybe a mat, maybe some light weights. That's about it, and you're ready to roll. So let's get into some examples of the popular VHS workout tapes from the 80s. The first one I thought of was the Jane Fonda workout.
And come up, get on your hands and knees, weight evenly distributed on your hands. These are called Rover's Revenge.
This came out in 1982, and it starred film star Jane Fonda. This was a mix of aerobics, toning exercises. It made Jane Fonda a fitness icon of the 80s, with her VHS tapes selling more than 17 million copies. She would follow this up in 1983 with the Jane Fonda's New Workout tape. So it's a sequel, just with new routines. I mean, you can't fault her for trying. If your first tape sold 17 million copies, you're probably like, oh, we got to get another one out there fast. Do all the same stuff, but in a different outfit. There was the Kathy Smith's aerobic workout from 1984. She emerged as one of the 80s most trusted instructors who offered energetic yet approachable workouts that appealed to a broad audience. She sold more than 16 million copies of her various workout tapes. She's also got an exercise and nutrition program called Project U. 1985 saw the release of the 20-minute workout with an all-female cast with the flashy leotards. This program was on TV and on VHS with short, high-energy aerobic routines. So for me as a child of the 80s, the one that I remember most, the one that I think of with the TV shows, exercise shows in the mornings, was Denise Austin. So she had a tape Stretch and Flex. This came out in 1986, and this was the beginning of her long-running career, emphasizing stretching, toning, maintaining health through approachable fitness. Her TV show, Getting Fit with Denise Austin, was on super early in the morning on ESPN first.
Hi, I'm Denise Austin. Join me every day to tone up and trim down. See how celebrities keep in shape and find out the latest on fitness.
So there's me, like 11, 12 years old, getting up in the morning to see what happened in the world of sports, and there's this exercise show. The later 80s saw some classics that you'll probably remember right away. Do you remember Buns of Steel?
They're the most fun you'll ever have crunching calories.
Oh, this is great, Robin. It's a really different exercise, but I feel it so much.
Right?
The new Buns of Steel are fun and easy to follow.
Imagine.
This was hosted by Greg Smithy. It's from 1987 and obviously focused on the butt, glutes, whatever you want to call it. The catchy title made it a cult hit. So the original Buns of Steel sold more than 1 million copies, but all of the offshoots of that, the whole Buns of Steel empire, has sold more than 14 million copies. Do you have a copy of the Buns of Steel VHS somewhere in your attic? If you don't have that one, maybe you have Richard Simmons sweating to the oldies.
Hey there, it's me, Richard Simmons. Listen, are you sick and tired of boring look-alike exercise videos with synthesized elevator music and a lineup of leotard-clad Stepford wives? Well, if you are, honey, have I got the cure for you. This is my brand new aerobic workout tape, Sweating to the Oldies.
This is an all-time classic from 1988 with famed exercise fitness guru Richard Simmons combining cardio workouts with classic pop hits. I'm thinking that outside of Jane Fonda, Richard Simmons was the crossover fitness star. He'd be all over different daytime talk shows and such. He'd just come out and he would be in character. He'd just full of energy like a Super Bowl with a pink tank top on. It wasn't just limited to adults at home. I mean, I think I've mentioned before they had the Mousercise show on the Disney Channel. Back in episode 198, I did a segment about the beginning of the Disney Channel, and I did mention Mousercise, which just think of it as any other 80s workout tape, just with kids instead of scantily clad women. But the 80s home workout craze couldn't stay hot forever. By the 90s into the early 2000s, the dominance of VHS began to fade. So you had more people getting into DVDs, which became more and more popular as the 90s went on. And yes, there were fitness DVDs, but the novelty of home workouts had worn off by the late 90s. Gyms also recalibrated, so you had more affordable gyms. You had chains of gyms, like 24-Hour Fitness. And you later had the rise of chains like Planet Fitness, Anytime Fitness, put in whatever other word you want, fitness. These gyms would start to offer some of these types of classes with yoga, Pilates, they had spinning. So it created more of a sense of community. So people didn't feel as intimidated going to a gym because you weren't going to be out on the floor with all the meatheads with the barbells. You could go to a separate class and do yoga and such. But then you started getting the rise of the infomercial fitness products like Billy Blank's Thai Bow, equipment like the Thigh Master or Bowflex. So if you didn't want to go to the gym, there were way more options than using the same VHS workout 1,000 times before it eventually became a coaster or a way to level out your coffee table's legs. And then eventually, with the rise of the internet and on-demand fitness, you had online videos, streaming services, fitness apps. You could pause this podcast right now, go to YouTube, and find thousands of credible home workouts that you could do with a snap of a finger. Even though the craze of VHS and home workouts and the TV shows has faded, the legacy still lives on. Jane Fonda and Richard Simmons became cultural icons. I mentioned Buns of Steel, or later you get things like 8-minute abs. Not 7-minute abs, but 8-minute abs. So even though the novelty of the home workouts in the 80s has faded, it's here to stay. When COVID happened, a lot of people went back into the home workouts. I know I'm a subscriber to a channel called Do Yoga With Me, and there's hundreds of different videos for different experience levels. Did any of you out there do any of these 80s home workouts, either on VHS, or did you get up early and do the Denise Austin show that I would see the last few minutes of before SportsCenter started? Who knows? Nostalgia, pop culture, everything is cyclical. Maybe we'll start getting the rise of these in-home workouts again. Maybe not VHS tapes and maybe not the clothing. We just have to wait long enough for the next Jane Fonda or Richard Simmons to come along. This week in history, we are going back 88 years to September 21st, 1937, and the original publication of the book The Hobbit. This book, also known as There and Back Again, was written by J.R.R. Tolkien. It began its life as a short story that he told to his children and grew into one of the most influential works of 20th century fantasy. The book introduced readers to Bilbo Baggins, the comforts of the Shire, dwarves with hard wills and soft songs, the dragon Smaug, and tucked into a cave the mysterious ring that would later become central to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. When you think back about how big The Hobbit is, how important it is, the original print run of this book was only 1,500 copies. Like I said, the book follows Bilbo Baggins, who is a respectable, home-loving hobbit who was recruited by the wizard Gandalf to join 13 dwarves on a quest to reclaim the dwarves' lost kingdom under the Lonely Mountain. Along the way, Bilbo faces trolls, goblins, giant spiders, elves, and men. He stumbles on a creature named Gollum and acquires by chance a ring of invisibility. Bilbo ultimately plays a crucial, courageous role in the confrontation with Smaug and later events that follow the reclaiming of Erebor. Tolkien personally drew several of the book's illustrations, including the end paper maps and the dust jacket artwork for the first edition. When it appeared in 1937, The Hobbit received warm reviews. Contemporary responses praised its imagination and storytelling and charm. Early supporters included fellow academics and writers like C.S. Lewis. The book was nominated for the Carnegie Medal and received a prize from the New York Herald Tribune for Best Juvenile Fiction in its era. It blew through its original 1,500 copy pressing. I'm pretty sure that most young boys that grew up from anywhere from the late 30s through today has read The Hobbit. The book's storytelling balances child-friendly narration with deep philosophical imagination, including major themes like adventure and personal growth, home and belonging, greed and the corrupting power of treasure, fate, chance, and courage. The Hobbit effectively launched Tolkien's Middle-earth and prepared the world for The Lord of the Rings, which was published in 1954 and 55. The book has been translated into many languages. It remains a cornerstone of fantasy literature. As far as my research goes, what I found is that The Hobbit has sold well over 100 million copies. I know I had a copy when I was young, obviously lost it. The tale has been adapted into stage productions, animated films, including one in 1977, and a major live-action trilogy directed by Peter Jackson in the 2010s. Even though it's been revised, reprinted numerous times, collectors prize that first impression, the 1937 version with the first 1,500 copies. If you can find a surviving copy in good condition, at auction it can fetch anywhere from $140,000 to $300,000. So look in your grandparents' attic and see. To this day, The Hobbit remains a singular blend of gentle storytelling and deep invented history. The first edition is not just the origin of Bilbo Baggins' adventure, it's the seed from which an entire imagined world grew. And that book, The Hobbit, was first published 88 years ago this week in history. Now it's time to turn the page to a brand new time capsule. We're going back in time 65 years to September 26th, 1960. What was going on in the world of pop culture back then? Well, let's find out. The number one song was My Heart Has a Mind of Its Own by Connie Francis. This was off of her album Many Tears Ago, and the song remained number one for 2 weeks. Connie Francis was one of the biggest female artists of the late 50s and early 60s, selling over 100 million albums. She became the first woman to top the Billboard Hot 100 charts in 1960 with the song Everybody Somebody's Fool. Connie Francis actually died only a few months ago in July 2025 at the age of 87. The number one movie was High Time, and you could get into the theater with a ticket costing 51 cents. This was a comedy starring such famed names as Fabian, Tuesday Weld, Bing Crosby, Gavin MacLeod. It's about a 50-something-year-old burglar who joins a college fraternity. It is 35% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes and was considered a flop as it basically broke even at the box office based on its budget. The number one TV show was Gunsmoke. This is the long-running Western about Marshal Matt Dillon in Dodge City, Kansas. The show was on for 20 seasons, from 1955 to 1975, and a total of 635 episodes. Gunsmoke was the number one show on television every year from 1957 to 1961, which is why if I ever do a time capsule from those years, it's always Gunsmoke. I need to just record kind of a soundbite about what it was and just insert it. And if you were around back then, September 26th, 1960, maybe you were interested in getting yourself a brand new stereo. Oh, well, you're in luck because there is a clearance sale going on at Jordan Marsh. You could get yourself a Stromberg Carlson stereo radio phonograph combo on sale for $499.95, or about $5,400 when adjusted for inflation to 2025. But just so you know you're getting a good deal, that is marked down from $829.95, or about $9,000 when adjusted for inflation. Could you see yourself spending $9,000 on any kind of stereo? Well, you can fill up your collection with records as low as $2.37, including rock and roll acts like Elvis, Paul Anka, Connie Francis, and Buddy Holly. But that'll wrap up a new time capsule. That wraps up This Week in History. But now let's go back to the 80s again and look at some of the top celebrity crushes of the decade in a brand new top 5. These are the celebrities that you had on your wall in poster form back in the 1980s. For this top 5, we are doing 1980s celebrity crushes. And because of that, we're going to do 2 different top 5s, male and female celebrity crushes, so there will be no honorable mentions. What I tried to do here was make it an overarching celebrity crushes. These are not necessarily my top 5 when it comes to the women, although I will give you mine so that you'll know. But I tried to do some research just to see who kind of fit that mold. They didn't have to be teen idols. They didn't have to fit any certain criteria, just that they were very popular and that guys and girls would swoon over them. These will be in no particular order, just like any other top 5. And we'll see how many of these you had on your walls in the 80s. So let's start with the men. Celebrity crushes of the 1980s. We'll start with number 1, Tom Cruise. Long before he was jumping on couches like a fool, he was the star of everything in the 80s. Risky Business, Top Gun, Cocktail. There was Born on the 4th of July, Rain Man. Tom Cruise's movies in the 1980s alone grossed more than $700 million. So he was easily the first one that popped in my mind as far as heartthrobs of the 80s went. Number 2 is Johnny Depp. Before he was a Keith Richards cosplay pirate, Johnny Depp was starring in Nightmare on Elm Street, 21 Jump Street. 21 Jump Street was really what made Johnny Depp. Either that or getting sucked into the bed as Glenn in Nightmare on Elm Street. It is funny, though, when I think about him in Pirates of the Caribbean, I can't picture the guy that was Glenn in Nightmare on Elm Street being that same one that he is today. But yeah, just like Tom Cruise, a good-looking baby-face guy, likely posters on walls of a lot of you ladies listening. One trait of a good-looking guy, I guess, would be good-looking hair. And number 3 had good-looking hair, and that was John Bon Jovi. The band Bon Jovi released their first album in 1984. That was when John Bon Jovi had the really teased hair. Bon Jovi was one of the biggest bands of the 1980s. They had songs like Runaway, Living on a Prayer, I'll Be There For You, You Give Love a Bad Name. Bon Jovi's 1986 album Slippery When Wet has sold more than 28 million copies worldwide. And another thing that probably makes him very appealing to most women is that John Bon Jovi married his high school sweetheart in 1989, Dorothea Hurley. So I mean, it makes it appealing because he's committed to one woman for 40 plus years, but it also means he is not available. And he's also now the father-in-law of Millie Bobby Brown from Stranger Things fame. Number 4 is Patrick Swayze. Growing up in the 1980s with 3 sisters, it was pretty easy to get kind of a short list of men that they had crushes on. I feel like at the top of the list was Patrick Swayze. His work in Dirty Dancing, Roadhouse, Ghost, earlier in Red Dawn. Dirty Dancing alone made him a household name and a huge star. The fact that he could dance, that's very attractive for women. You know, if a guy has rhythm. Patrick Swayze's movies in the 1980s made well over $400 million total. At least that was box office in the 80s. He seemed like a guy that could be romantic, but yet also tough as seen in Roadhouse. It's crazy to think that Patrick Swayze has been dead for more than 15 years now. And finally, number 5 on the top 5 male celebrity crushes of the 1980s is Michael J. Fox. He's another baby-faced guy, someone that seems very sweet and loving. He was known for being Alex P. Keaton on Family Ties, Marty McFly in the Back to the Future trilogy. But he also had a lot of other movies. Teen Wolf, Casualties of War, Light of Day, Secrets of My Success. Just the 3 Back to the Future films alone have grossed almost $1 billion worldwide. So those are, at least with my research, the ones I came up with for top 5 male celebrity crushes of the 80s. Your list likely will vary. But let's get into the ladies. Top 5 1980s female celebrity crushes. We'll start with number 1, Heather Locklear. She was a big part of 1980s TV shows like Dynasty and TJ Hooker. the classic blonde bombshell. Later in the 90s, when she was on Melrose Place, that was when she became more of the hardened, kind of manipulative businesswoman. There were plenty of Heather Locklear posters on the walls of high school boys in the 1980s. She's known mainly for TV, not too much in the way of movies. Like I said, Dynasty, TJ Hooker. In the 90s, it was Melrose Place, Spin City. Number 2 is Phoebe Cates. People that grew up in the 80s, I could just say Fast Times at Ridgemont High. You would know exactly the scene I'm talking about. The kind of scene that VCRs were invented for boys of the 1980s. She was the dark hair, dark eyes, looked like the girl next door. She was also in Gremlins. Interestingly, she's mainly an 80s celebrity crush because for all intents and purposes, she retired from acting in the 90s. She doesn't do much of that anymore. She married actor-comedian Kevin Kline, who's 15 years older than her, back in 1989, and her career kind of slowed down after that. Number 3 is Christy Brinkley. Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue cover model. She was everywhere in the 1980s. She was in National Lampoon's Vacation as Chevy Chase's kind of love interest besides his wife. Christy Brinkley, besides being a model, she was in a lot of commercials, a lot of endorsements. CoverGirl Cosmetics, Prel Shampoo, Diet Coke, Chanel. In the 2000s, she started doing the Total Gym endorsement, that machine with Chuck Norris. If you saw her even today, you wouldn't think that Christy Brinkley was 71 years old. It blows my mind that Christy Brinkley was married to Billy Joel, and people are like, oh, Billy Joel, he was soft rock. Well, he was also the man, because before he was with Christy Brinkley, he also dated another supermodel, Elle Macpherson. So you may not like Billy Joel's music, but you cannot knock his game with the ladies. My God, 2 supermodels in a row. Anyway, moving on. Number 4 is Catherine Bach. Who is Catherine Bach, you might ask? All I'd have to say is Daisy Duke, and you could probably picture in your mind. If you know what Daisy Dukes are, but you don't know who Daisy Duke is, she was the cousin of Bo and Luke Duke on the Dukes of Hazzard, known for wearing very, very short jean shorts. As with all of these celebrities, there were a lot of pinups of Catherine Bach with the Daisy Dukes on. I was a little too young when watching the Dukes of Hazzard when it was on to feel any sort of weird feelings seeing Catherine Bach in the short shorts. I liked the car more than anything else. And finally, number 5 on the list of 1980s female celebrity crushes is Elizabeth Shue. She is another one who has aged very well. She was in Back to the Future 2, The Karate Kid, Cocktail, another one that had a very girl next door look to her. It's weird, growing up in the 80s and growing up with all of these celebrities, age becomes different. Elizabeth Shue, she's 61 years old now. She doesn't look 61. Like when I look at pictures of all 10 of these celebrities I've talked about, with the fact that most of them are late 60s, early 70s possibly now, they don't look their age. Maybe because I grew up with them, so I've aged with them. I don't know if that's a thing. Elizabeth Shue was definitely on my list of 1980s celebrity crushes. If you were wondering, just my list was Elizabeth Shue, Janet Jackson, Belinda Carlisle, Alyssa Milano, and one that's a little bit out of left field, but horror fans might know, Danielle Harris. She played Michael Myers' niece, Jamie Lloyd, in Halloween 4 and 5. I had a major crush on her. She's the same age as me, so I'm watching her in Halloween 4, and she's, 11 years old like me. She was one of those celebrities in the 90s that I wanted to write a fan letter to, but then unfortunately she had some idiot stalker, so then I felt bad. I'm like, well, now I don't want to send her anything that says how great I think she is. But there you go. 1980s celebrity crushes, male and female, and then mine at the end, just if you wanted to know exactly my top 5. But now we'll leave the 80s behind, at least for this episode, and go back further to the 1970s. Let's look at some forgotten 1970s cereals and see how many you think you had in your cabinets growing up. There's nothing like a nice big bowl of cereal, whether it's on a Saturday morning when you're in school, or if you're in your late 40s on a random night that you just feel like having breakfast for dinner. Over my lifetime, there have been dozens of classic cereals that are staples. Frosted Flakes, Rice Krispies, Apple Jacks, Cocoa Puffs, Lucky Charms. God, I could just keep going. But as with anything, for every cereal or product that becomes a staple, there are some that come and go pretty quick. What we're going to do here is we're going to look at 10 forgotten 1970s cereals. I can't say that these were all popular at one point. I can't say that they didn't exist in 1969 or 1980. But for the most part, these cereals were released and had their rise and fall in the 1970s. For you lovers of cereal out there, a lot of this information, you can find so much good stuff. There's a site called MrBreakfast.com. I'll put it in the podcast notes if you want to go check it out. Any cereal you could think of is there. The first one I want to talk about is called Crazy Cow.
Kids of America, your best friend's a cow! Crazy Cow! The nutritious cereal that makes chocolate-flavored milk. It's part of this complete breakfast. Just pour on milk, stir, and the milk starts to turn chocolatey.
This cereal was first introduced in 1977. There was a strawberry and a chocolate version. The big claim to fame was that it turned your milk that flavor. As with a lot of cereals, they claimed it was nutritious, but they needed to make it fun for kids to eat. The mascot was a just typical cow with 4 teeth, 2 on top, 2 on the bottom. Some kind of Little Rascals looking pink hat. The cereal did not last that long, a few years, because it just blended in with any other cereal. If you wanted chocolate milk in your cereal, you could get Cocoa Puffs or just dump Nestle Quick powder in your cereal. The next one is kind of a twofer, as you get 2 cereals that were branded and would cross-promote. That was Sir Grapefellow and Baron von Redberry.
Tally-ho! Sir Grapefellow here with my new grape-flavored oat cereal, about to make a perfect 3-point landing.
These are supposed to be World War I pilots that are frenemies. I do find it interesting, a grape-flavored cereal. Both of these were introduced in 1972, and typically the ads would feature one of the mascots and then the other one would come in. Baron von Redberry was a raspberry-flavored cereal. They each had star-shaped marshmallows with the grape or raspberry flavor. The cereal is quote-unquote vitamin-charged. I love going back to the Mr. Breakfast site because they'll have pictures of the boxes of cereal, and you can see they also list some of the free toys that would be inside the cereal boxes. Free diving sub and frogman in Baron von Redberry cereal. What I found when it came to these cereals was that they didn't sell well. They would constantly be up against the monster cereals, which had more colorful characters, Frankenberry, Count Chocula, Boo Berry. So they were discontinued in 1975. The next forgotten 70s cereal is Buckwheats. It's spelled B-U-C, Wheats.
Buckwheat cereal here captures that robust taste in flakes, toasted crisp with a snap of maple flavor, and fortified with first-rate nutrition. Stone-ground buckwheat is hard to come by.
No, it did not have a picture of the Little Rascals character on it. It was literally buckwheat, like the food on the box. This was marketed more of a high nutrition cereal, something akin to Special K, Product 19, Or other cereals I, as a kid, would have thought of as boring. Wheaties, Corn Flakes. Who wants that crap? Buckwheats first came out in 1971. They did last into the 1980s because there is a scene from an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood in 1984 where he's in the cereal aisle of a supermarket and you can see buckwheats on the shelf. According to people who had buckwheats, it was like cornflakes, but with more buckwheat in it. So it's sort of like, why would you want this when you could just have the regular cornflakes? I found several people, reviewers, who said they liked buckwheats. But just because I find 5 people that liked it doesn't mean there's not thousands that didn't like it, hence why it was discontinued in the early 1980s. Did any of you out there ever eat crunchy logs? Oh, and they spelled logs with 2 G's, so you know it's fun. Crunchy Logs came out in 1978. It had a beaver mascot, so you could basically be like a beaver. Your cereal is like making a dam in your milk. The character was named Bixby Beaver. He looks to have a red button-down shirt and jeans on and a red hat, so I guess he's supposed to be kind of like a lumberjack. It's hard to find much in the way of information about Crunchy Logs, which means it probably came and went pretty fast. All I know is it was sweetened corn and oat cereal shaped like logs so you could eat like a beaver. Oh well, that failed. Another one that failed was Magic Puffs. This was released in 1974. The mascot is a magician's hat. It's kind of purpley with a yellow star on top of it. Some of these cereals with the mascots, it's like people were just trying to find anything that hadn't been represented yet. I mean, so far, just in this segment, we've had World War I pilots, cows, beavers, now magicians' hats, and it's gonna get weirder. The story goes that the Magic Hat mascot was originally for another cereal called Magic Hats. This was supposedly a cream-filled puff cereal. It doesn't look any different than Kix, if you know that cereal. And of course, it's nutritious, quote-unquote, 8 essential vitamins and minerals. One of those minerals, sugar. Much like with Crunchy Logs, there's not a lot of info I could find about Magic Puffs. I am assuming they did not make it out of the 1970s. But I might be wrong. Did any of you out there eat Magic Puffs in the 80s? Oh, but the hits keep on coming. The next forgotten cereal is Klondike Pete's Crunchy Nuggets. Klondike Pete was a prospector. His cereal came out in 1972. It lasted 3 whole years before being discontinued in 1975. Klondike Pete would search for gold with his mule Thorndike. It's like they put more effort into the backstory of the mascot than actually making the cereal good. You never know, maybe there's room out there for a children's TV show about the adventures of Klondike Pete. Now, there is a bit of a caveat to this one. Klondike Pete's Crunchy Nuggets came out in 1972, but this cereal traces its lineage back to 1939, when it was known as Ranger Joe Rice Honeys and Ranger Joe Wheat Honeys. These were bought in 1954 by Nabisco, which I was today years old when I found out that that meant National Biscuit Company. That's what Nabisco is. See, you learn something new every day. But eventually they were changed to Klondike Pete, and that was their last-ditch attempt to keep the cereal going. So if you want to be technical, yes, this cereal was a lot older, but the Klondike Pete version only lasted 3 years in the 70s. Another cereal that you know is fun just based on its name is Mr. Wonderful Surprise. Why is it fun? Because Wonderful has 2 L's and Surprise has a Z in it. Woo, very 90s despite being 70s. Mr. Wonderful Surprise was not Paul Orndorff, the wrestler, pile-driving Hulk Hogan and turning on him in 1986. No, it was creamy chocolate-flavored filling in the cereal, which debuted in 1972. Mr. Wonderful looks like some psychotic clown, mouth wide open, who looks like a periscope for a hat. All that's missing on this character is the straitjacket and throw it into the padded room. The real surprise with Mr. Wonderful was that some of the puffs that had the creamy chocolate center would burst when they were being shipped around. So you'd get a lot of hollow puffs and a lot of clumps of chocolate filling down at the bottom of the box. So needless to say, the crazy-looking Mr. Wonderful surprise was not all that wonderful. Another forgotten cereal with weird mascots was Freakies.
Oh, we are the Freakies, and this is our Freakies treat. We never miss a meal, cause we love our cereals. This is the big boss, we call them Boss Moss. Make sure you spell it right.
These were from Ralston. They came out in 1973. It was originally going to be a flake cereal, Freaky Flakes, but it ended up being a puffed cereal that looked a lot like Cheerios or other competing cereals of the time, Quisp and Quake. It was a big hit at first due to the weird bumpy mascots that were on the front, the Freakies. And there were 7 different Freaky characters: Boss Moss, Cow Mumble, Gargle, Goody Goody, Grumble, Ham Hose, and Snorkeldorf. Just like Ham Hose. What kind of a name is that? Supposedly, all of these Freakies characters were based on people that worked with the copywriter who created them. So that means there's somebody that was the real-life Ham Hose. You imagine finding that out? This character was based on you? Eventually, there were Cocoa Freakies and Fruity Freakies. But once the novelty wore off, the cereal was discontinued in 1977. It did make a very brief comeback in 1987, but it lasted less than a year. We go back to the nutritious cereals for the next one. That was Country Morning. It was from Kellogg's and came out in 1975. It was said to be the all-natural cereal. Oats and rice and almonds and brown sugar. The covers, the boxes here were just pictures of houses at sunrise, like a farmhouse. Again, cereals are mostly marketed towards kids. So if I was growing up in the 70s and I saw Tony the Tiger or Snap Crackle Pop, and then I saw a house, just a sunrise, I'd be like, I don't want that. I want the one that makes it look like I'm going to be hyper about a minute after eating it. Not one that has me want to sip sweet tea on the porch. At least not when I was 12. Maybe now. Country Morning did not last long because, like I said, if you want natural cereals, you can get the boring ones that were already out, like Corn Flakes, Wheaties, Total, ones that my Nana would have had. And last but not least, on 1970s forgotten cereals is Corny Snaps.
Never fear, I bring fun back to breakfast with Kellogg's Corny Snap cereal.
The shape of the ass.
And the taste of sweet, crunchy corn.
Bless you, masked turtle.
There's fun.
Corny Snaps featured Shelly the Turtle as the mascot, a reddish-orange turtle that ended up looking more like the Zorro character. These were first introduced in 1975 through Kellogg's, and they had kind of this curvy S-shaped cereal. It again comes back to, if you're going to introduce a new cereal with some kind of wacky mascot, you really need to make an impact. A Zorro-looking turtle with Cheerios-type S-shaped cereal. It just doesn't seem like it's going to make any difference in a world of Sugar Smacks or Sugar Pops or Sugar Frosted Flakes. Should have just been Sugar Snaps. Again, this one did not last long. As with most of these, there's always new cereals coming out. Now I'm at the age that I don't try any of the new ones. I just go with ones that I know, all from my childhood. But there you go, 10 forgotten 1970s cereals. Did you eat any of these? Do you remember them? The only one that I remembered and didn't have to look up was Freakies, because of those stupid-looking mascots. All the rest, when I was researching, I have no memories of, didn't know they existed. Maybe I'll celebrate tonight cereal, have some Lucky Charms, or, ooh, it's that time of year I could have Count Chocula. I'm sure that's healthy. But until next week, that's going to wrap up episode 213 of the In My Footsteps podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for making it to the end, your weekly dose of Gen X nostalgia. It's funny how I bookend the podcast with home workouts and then sugary cereals. It's like sending a confusing message. Next week on the podcast, we start October, spooky season. Oh, I can't wait. Episode 214 is going to include a look back at the In Search Of TV show that starred Leonard Nimoy. It was mystery, supernatural, a bit of a precursor to Unsolved Mysteries. We're going to do a deep dive into the Simpsons Treehouse of Horrors episodes, the Halloween episodes. It's where I learned about the Twilight Zone more than on the Twilight Zone itself. There's going to be a brand new top 5 featuring 1970s urban legends. So that's going to be good. A lot of scary stuff, scary fun stuff to kick off October. If you enjoy my content, you can become a subscriber on Patreon for $5 a month. You can even go and join on the free tier. Very soon is going to be the full-length Florida 20 years ago story. Like I said, over 40 minutes of just wackiness that is my life. You can also buy me a coffee. Links are in the podcast notes. Of course, if donating isn't your thing, you can just share my content, share the podcast, YouTube videos, blogs. Visit my website, ChristopherSetterland.com. It's got links to my currently 9 books. Next week, book 10 will be out. I will have a landing page for it in the podcast notes. Kind of back to my roots with a Cape Cod history anthology book. Also, be sure to share the GoFundMe for the short film that myself and Frank Durant are working on, When Henry Met Henry. It's done really well, but there's still a few more weeks and more donations is always good. Find me all over social media. I've got a Facebook fan page for the podcast. I'm on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky. Subscribe on YouTube. Check out my blog. It's got that Florida Living 20 Years Later blog. It's like 5,000 words, but it's got loads of photos in it. That breaks up the monotony of my words. Even though fall has now officially started, the weather still isn't going to be really cold for another few months. So even though the days are getting shorter, you can still get outside, enjoy the weather, take the podcast with you. I try to make them a decent length, close to an hour. That's a good walk. You should be able to get 2 to 3 miles in, even if you're walking really slow. I should make a version of this podcast where I just lay down like a techno house beat under the whole thing, so then you can just work out to it. There's a TikTok remix that I don't want. I'll keep you all updated all over social media when it comes to the When Henry Met Henry project, my 10th book coming out, where you can see Cape Cod Cthulhu, my first acting gig, my interview that I did with cast and crew, that should be going up in the next week or so on YouTube, corresponding with the movie being out for DVD, Blu-ray purchase, and then streaming platforms. I always have so much to do and the same amount of time. But it's all good stuff, all stuff I love doing. I do just wish I had more time to do it. But that can always change in the days, weeks, and months ahead. But until next time, remember, in this life, don't walk in anyone else's footsteps, create your own path, and enjoy every moment you can on this journey we call life, because you never know what tomorrow brings. Thank you all again for tuning in to episode 213. This has been the In My Footsteps podcast. I am Christopher Setterland. You already knew that. And I'll talk to you all again soon.